behind this. Oh, I'm sorry. John, there is a message that just popped up saying the content of this meeting is being sent to a third party. Behind. Oh, is it because it's live streaming on YouTube?
Maybe.
Oh, I'm sorry. John, there is a message that just popped up saying the content of this meeting is being sent to a third party.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah, I think it's because it's being live streamed on YouTube. I think we're good. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we're good.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry, Jodie. So do you think that there is a specific advocacy group that is behind the bill?
Yeah, CHIP, Community Housing Improvement Program, which
Okay.
is a landlord lobby.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, cool.
Can I add to that? Because the bill was introduced last year by the same two legislators, and funny enough, it wasn't the same as, it was almost like competing bills, but with the same text. But this year, they became the same as, well, Kenny Burgos' bill became the same as Senator Comrie's. But H.J. Foray last year had convinced a lot of legislators to remove their names from Kenny Burgos' bill. And I don't think they reappeared this year, but Senator Comrie's co-sponsors did. And it's a shame because they obviously don't see that this bill is a slap in the face to anybody who worked on HSTPA 5-6 years ago. And that's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, anybody else? Questions? So, Jodie, oh, Layla, go ahead.
Sorry. So, Jodie, what is your specific ask vis-a-vis this bill?
Well, we're not as worried about this particular bill because we don't think it's moving, but we are very concerned about like a sort of this alternate, the IAI increase. As I mentioned, IAI increases were the tool that devastated housing in the Lower East Side and, really throughout the city. And we have heard talk of also a vacancy bonus, which some people have called the eviction bonus because, the incentive is to get people out and get those increases. So while this bill, I don't think has as much traction as, the real estate lobby would hope, we are concerned about these kind of alternates that would also do lots and lots of damage.
And we have a memorandum of opposition, which I can drop into the chat. And Jodie, do you want to expand on that?
Well, it does call out the bill, to say that we're firmly against it. But then it also mentions a couple of other issues, and one is the IAI increases. Yeah, that's been a major tool of harassment for tenants.
Can you say more about that? I admit my quasi-ignorance.
Oh, sorry. Tell me if I'm, not being clear enough about these things. I'm happy to, go in more detail.
What is the IAI increase?
It's individual apartment improvements. So after you could do it while somebody lived in the apartment, but generally it was done after someone left. Under what circumstances, it's questionable. Like Steve Croman was famous for getting people out of his buildings, right? So he was doing that to get the IAI increase. And that would be like, it could be pretty superficial stuff. It could be things like new flooring, new light fixtures, new appliances, tile in the bathroom, stuff like that. So, it was designed to really do serious renovations, but landlords use it to do very superficial thing. And I think I even heard of a case where there was like something like marble doorknobs. People don't need marble doorknobs. They need affordable places to live. So this, thing that was designed to like keep apartments in good condition was actually just used to harass people out, raise rents, and you could destabilize, prior to 2019, you could destabilize apartments. Now you can't, but you can raise rents very high. Is that clear enough?
Yes, thank you so much, Jodie. Thank you.
Yeah.
So they keep bringing up these bills in one form or another. We've had this, I think, on the table before. Am I correct, Jody?
Yeah, Alex mentioned that this bill was, at play last year.
Yeah, and it's going to keep continuing to come up. So in, instead of they put us behind the eight ball a lot of tenants behind the eight ball, trying to catch up, trying to defend, and then people, of course, get elderly and stay and go out of the activist market, shall I say. And so there's new people. They have to battle the same things over again. They are threatening homes, people's homes that they build and live in, and create a community around them in the building. So what's the answer? What's the answer?
Oh, so I'm going to give the answer to all the housing problems. Well, that is, some ways it's very complex, right? But then other ways it's not complex. So we need more people involved in housing issues. We need more people to attend and get involved in tenant friendly types of activities. We need people to keep pressure on their elected officials so they don't fall sway to the millions and millions of dollars that are being spent by the real estate lobby. Like the whole issue around vacant apartments, right? We feel like we kind of brought that to people's attention, and then the landlords latched onto it and started saying, "Yeah, we can't afford to rent these. We don't have any money. Our buildings are, I think they said, crumbling or something like that." So they take issues and they twist them for their own benefit.
Sure.
So it's really important for people to be knowledgeable about what's going on and to make sure that their elected officials don't fall sway to the real estate spin. We have one.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Yeah. What role does the DLB, Department of Buildings in New York, have regarding, inspectional services or the Board of Health? So I know if you don't have heat at a certain temperature, there's an issue with the Board of Health or the city. If there are vermin or whatever, in the environment, there's another health issue. So is the city participating or helping in creating, seeking out these violations and rectifying these situations?
Well, I'll speak from our tenant's perspective. There's a new landlord that's bought some buildings, and it's pretty much on the tenants to report everything. So they are almost acting like building monitors. And that's not fair to them. There's illegal hotels happening. They have to, have to make all the reports. Otherwise, nothing will happen. When the landlord's not cooperative on repairs, they have to call in 311 to go to HPD. Illegal construction, they have to call DOB. So, I don't know, yes and no. There are individual people definitely trying to do a great job under, tight financial circumstances. I don't know. That's above my pay grade, Harvey.
Well, no, it's important because if you don't have hot water, or you don't have running water, or you have roof leaks, obviously those buildings are going to deteriorate further. And I think that's part of what has to happen. Someone has to be active and get organized and see what the law says and what the building code says. As an architect, I know that, and pursue that. I mean, the landlord, I'm not saying there's any illegality. Landlords may have a way to skirt some of those issues, but not for long. I mean, if you have serious problems in a building. Now, even some of the best managed buildings have shutdowns of heating systems and cooling systems, luxury buildings. and tenants get upset. And they say, we sent out a notice. Well, the heat will be off for 3 days. Well, that's not very good. We're having a cold snap. But at least there's in a condo or a co-op, you have a board and you have someone to complain to. So there's got to be a tenant organization in the building that has to be able to receive these complaints and and make sure things begin to get done. So when buildings run out, don't have electricity for a week at a time, Niger, for instance, this is serious stuff. You can't use your elevator, et cetera, et cetera. You just and they're all under the same building code. They're all under the same inspectional requirements. So I just think we have to get tougher with the inspectional department.
The Department of Buildings actually created a subdivision called the Office of the Tenant Advocate, and it's for tenants to contact. You can email them or call them. I don't know which year it started. If anybody knows, you could put it into the chat. I think it's probably at least 10 years old by now. And the person who heads that department is actually one of the former directors of HCC, which is, as you can see in my name under the box, it says Alex Wisner, HCC. So I should know which year it started, but specifically in relation to construction, they want tenants to contact them. And it doesn't have to be about construction, but especially about construction. And it's particularly useful for market rate tenants who sometimes, they don't have the same paths to rectification as regulated tenants, but it's called the Office of the Tenant Advocate, and Sarah Desmond is the, director of it. I could put the info into the chat, and I just want to say I dropped in our memorandum of opposition sign-on form in the chat. I can pop it in again, and that's my answer to the DOB question.
Alex, let's get Sarah here next week, because we're going to be having talking about the architecture and that sort of thing, and she can fit right in. We can fit her in. Let's see if we can get her to come in and chat with us. Sound good? And Jodie, I think you wanted to say something.
Yeah, what Charisma said in the chat, they never do anything. I've been trying for years. It's crazy how people keep saying it's something we can do. I mean, I think, I've worked with tenants who definitely feel abandoned by the agencies. I'll give you one example. This landlord, he's definitely a handful. He has so many penalties and fines he hasn't paid, just to give you an example of how he runs his building. And so recently he went under the building, dug out all this dirt. He was going to build and started pulling out support beams. He said he was going to build another apartment in there. And now the building's structurally unsound. So it's really tough for tenants living with in buildings where there's, problems like this.
How do you get away with that without posting, going, he has to get a permit. So he just did it on his own, huh? I know if people do that, but.
Not really. That would be, cause for a shutdown immediately. Just call someone, a neighbor just has to call up and say this is going on, and they'll be down there and shut them down in 2 minutes. Yeah. I mean, I've had that complaint, and a client was notified by a neighbor that they had a tenant living in their basement, and they got a violation with a fine. The owners immediately. Now, this was not in New York City. This was in a suburb. But still, it's the same building code.
Yeah. But
absolutely.
Yeah.
The thing is,
go ahead.
Sorry.
Jodie, I'm sorry.
Just to say, he, if he's not pulling the support beams and digging the dirt from underneath the basement, he's running an illegal hotel. He's having somebody call and harass the tenant. He's spreading construction dust so heavily they can't breathe. So it's just like an assault. Right? That's why Stand for Tenant Safety got started. It's not usually just one thing at a time. It's a multitude of things that you're facing constantly. So.
What are the playbook? Let's go to Layla. Layla's got her hand up.
Thank you. This is really super interesting. Thank you so much, Alex and Jodie. Just a question, pivoting a little bit. What role do you think the CPC, the Community Preservation Corporation, plays? And how does that tie with what's going on with the Signature Bank and New York Community Bank Corp? Because, I have grave concerns about, the fact that those banks are actually undersold. And, tying back to what we're going to be talking about, there is an individual who has actually professed very publicly that his goal is to short the multifamily rent regulated market, and that he is actually working with hedge funds doing exactly that. And that there is grave concerns that actually, some of these landlords are awful, but others are actually kind of okay. It's just that they don't have access to capital, and whether it is FDIC or CPC, those used to be tools that would actually help landlords so that, and it's not about, doing the marble handle. It's actually, instead of fixing the leaks, you're replacing the riser. And at some point, that's what these buildings need. What is your take on that dynamic?
Go ahead, Alex.
Well, with regard to CPC specifically, I guess because I know they're friends with John Mudd, so like I kind of want to be, I guess, judicious and careful about what I say. But John, am I mistaken? CPC is friendly with you, right?
CPC.
Layla, CPC.
Community Preservation Corporation. So it's this like lender that provides loans and mortgages. So maybe, are you thinking of CSS?
No. CSS is the policy think tank.
Yeah.
I'm just referring to there's an email coming into my mind right now, and Layla, you're even on it, and one of John's CPC main contacts is. So I propose that at some point he's invited to this, not today's meeting, but like, the month of May or June or whatever. And but really, no, I think I'll just limit what I say. Sorry.
Never, Alex, never be shy. This is for everybody. Okay, this is a safe place. We're here working together. We have issues with something or another. Be open about it. I think you have probably the wrong person.
I'll try to find it.
Yeah,
I'll try to find it.
maybe you're thinking of CDRC.
I'll try to find it.
Yeah, but no, we have to talk about things, put things on the table. And other people might have information that other people don't. So don't be shy. Don't ever be shy. We don't have to be rude, but even when officials are on here and so forth, we're here working together, and this is why we come here. So Alex, no worries. And I think most of you know that about me in this meeting. So Jodie, this bill, regulated housing restoration adjustment, local regulated adjustment, like they're doing a good thing. So we know who the bill writer is. So we know people are. It has to be through ignorance or through relationships that they have with the developers in the real estate industry. Correct? Can I say that? Everybody agree with that? I assume everybody agrees with that. What do we do? We have to educate them, of course, but we have to, they've got the money, of course, to send people to lobby and everything. But we've got a serious problem. This affects everything. Everything from housing to the right to counsel. We're up there fighting for right to counsel. They watered down the bill. So we're up there making compromises, telling them what we can't live with, or and some of these legislators, they didn't know about it. And I believe in earnest they didn't. And I'm sure some of them just want to, check that box and say we won something for the tenants. But and it's a struggle all the time. So your thoughts?
I feel like you're giving me very high level, big picture questions. I mean, yeah, we know real estate has a pernicious influence on housing. It has for decades. Um, but what's neat is, when Housing Justice for All formed, it was the Upstate Downstate Coalition. So I think real estate was able to influence upstate legislators quite a bit to, water down or, have a negative effect on what happens in the city. But that's no longer true. And I think, the housing movement is getting so much stronger. I heard that the RSA, which was the biggest landlord group, and CHIP, another landlord group, have joined forces and become one group now. I think because the housing movement's getting just stronger and stronger. We know that half of the state, I think, is renters. So we should have a massive impact on what happens in Albany. You're on mute.
I think the coalescing is important. I mean, this is what causes homelessness, the development and the development policies too that we have. So yeah, maybe a bill of rights for tenants and not to be broken, like the Ten Commandments, right? But they're broken all the time, aren't they? Anyway, anybody else before we move on? Questions? Anything to add, Jodie?
Well, I wanted to point out that the memorandum of opposition sign-on form is in the chat, and I'll put it again. I put it in like 3 times already. But Jodie, is there anything people need to know when they fill out that sign-on form?
No, just if you agree, you can sign on. And I think, this isn't stand for tenant safety in department warehousing, but we're also part of Housing Justice for All. Like longer term, tenants should control and have a stake in their own housing so that they're not always in this fight with a private landlord that wants to profit, right? So there's the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, a bill that's has some traction, so that tenants would have the first right of refusal to buy their homes. Not saying that co-ops and stuff are perfect, but there are other ways where tenants have more control over their own housing, and it's not just at the mercy uh, of somebody who's driven by profit. So I think that's a good way to go for tenants.
Yeah, thank you, Jodie. Now we've got a few people here. Anybody that we haven't heard from that wants to make a comment, don't be shy. Anybody else have any questions on their minds? Okay.
Well, the whole point of senior citizens, I wanted to just have that not go over everyone's heads, because seniors, for the most part, have lived in their apartments for 10 years or longer. And that's one of the key parts of this evil bill, is saying that the next tenant who comes after the long-term tenant will have their market reset to HUD levels, HUD FMR it's called. And then so the question becomes, well, why would you care about who moves in after you? You're gone. You're already somewhere else, And the reason is because in order for that HUD FMR reset to happen, something has to happen first, and that's eviction of you, the long-term tenant. So that sometimes gets lost as I think it's the most salient point of this bill, the most frightening part. Because I've lived here for 15 years, 15 and a half years, and the neighborhood is good. Layla, it's in CB5. It's on the edge of CB5. I can see the red TKTS staircase from my window. A lot of theaters are around here. One is directly across the street. So the better your neighborhood, and it applies to all neighborhoods, but I'm just saying, the better your neighborhood, the longer you've lived in your apartment, watch out, because if that bill passes, there'll be a target on my back.
Yeah, good, very good point. Well, Dina says something. Dina, Officer. Okay, you're just putting your information there. Am I correct? I work with. Okay, Dana, do you want to speak to everybody about that real quick? I'll okay, Dana, I'll read what you have then. Maybe you're having some trouble with your mute button. Dina Myers is from the Mayor's Office of Public Engagement Unit in New York City HRA Home Support Unit. I work with landlords, real estate brokers, and shelter staff to assist clients with New York City housing vouchers to find affordable housing. I can be reached at, and she has her cell in there and her email. She's looking for landlords, good landlords that will participate, and that's I think is a good in that statement, Dina. I think what you're asking for is what you're actually highlighting is the need for landlords that want to participate, that we can give incentives and support. And I gotta say, it's probably far and few in between. Um, I live in a small tenement building. And they buy these things, and sometimes they hang on to them. Sometimes they have them in the portfolio for a long time as an investment. These are our homes. When they invest in building homes for people, it needs a special consideration and protection. So I appreciate that, Tina. Marty, you have something, and then we.
Yeah, yeah, just quickly, I just wanted to let people know, like, where I live, our building, it's in kind of like North Chelsea, basically rent stabilized building. So I forget what the name of our tenants group is. It's like the 440 Tenants Association. We live 440 West 34th Street, but our fearless leader, Julia Campanelli, what she did is she challenged the landlord's MCI increases. This was several years ago, and she's really good, like in terms of bureaucracy. She's just like, a dog with a bone. She does it. She's relentless. And she challenged the MCI increases and basically got the MCI increases like reduced by 50%. So instead of $27 a room, I think we're paying like $13 a room. And this was, I think, before 2019, before before the new laws, that those 2019 laws were in place. But that was super helpful. Just to give people ideas, because it can be done. But also, I'm wondering why there's no talk about the Ertstat law, how that would return control from Albany to City Council. And, I feel like the policies like good cause eviction, and while there's some good in that, it's not like hugely transformative. Like, I always wonder why, like a lot of the policy groups, they choose policies that are a little bit, I would like argue watered down. Like, why don't they go for like the big policy changes, like, returning power back to the city? And I always wonder why that is. And also I wonder why, John, you and I talk about this, but public housing, I feel like sometimes public housing is never in the conversation. And, I just wanted to throw that out there. Thanks.
Okay. And if somebody has a comment.
I know there's a lot I said.
No, it's good stuff. We certainly can put that on an agenda. If anybody wants to comment, we can do that quickly, but we have to move on.
I just think Michael McKee has thoughts on the Ertstat law because he mentions it quite a bit.
Oh yeah. Okay. So let's drag him in. Let's put this on the agenda maybe. No, very good thoughts, Marty.
Yeah, I also think Mike McKee, though, has pushed policies like mandatory inclusionary housing, which never really creates, any sort of genuinely affordable housing. I don't know. I mean, that's here. We can always debate that, but yeah. Anyways, this is a conversation for another time. But I just think it's interesting. Like, where do those policy groups actually get their direction? Like, I would be very curious about that. So it's just another thing to think about. Thanks.
Yeah. I think, it's what can we coalesce around? What can we gain? And I guess it's, every group has their own focus. Yeah, it's a good question. And it's good to find those intersection with each other, definitely. But maybe there's, with the added input, maybe we can, add some more protections and go deeper into it, like what you were saying, Marty. I think that's a good idea. Anyway, we'll move on to Layla. Layla's got a lot to talk about. I think this is going to be a robust conversation too. Layla, why don't you just take it away?
Thank you, John. So I'm actually joined by my colleague Vittoria Ferriello, and we are here to talk to you about a recent development. I will start from my vantage point and tell you a little bit about what unfolded, and then Victoria will bring another viewpoint that tells basically the same story, and wanted to share this information with this group, and see what your thoughts are, and what kind of strategy you think would be wise to develop. So I've been a member of Community Board 5 for almost 20 years. I joined as a public member. I became a full member 18 years ago, and I have served on the board in various capacities. I live in CB5, I work in CB5, I've raised my family here, I'm a member of this community. And in the past 5-6 years, I will say, I was the chair of the Land Use Committee as well as the Landmarks Committee. In the past 3 years, Community Board 5, which up until then had been a very stable board, in the sense that we actually have a huge turnover. We're the least residential district in the entire city. We're the business district. So we have a lot of turnover, but the board was very stable because the leadership was really excellent, with a big emphasis on working towards consensus and collegiality, and making sure that we would follow rules and procedures and protocols. And that served us really, really well. CB5, I think, is a very respected board, and a partner with all the various stakeholders, including elected officials, city agencies, but also MTA and ESD and other authorities that have some matters in the district. I want to say, like 3 years ago, we started seeing a shift in the appointments to the community board, with members who seemed to be on the board not really to represent their own views or represent the community, but more to represent special interests. And as the month went by, we started to see also a shift in the way these members would behave. Very often they would never reach out to chairs of committees, but wait for the full board meeting to get on and make vitriolic statements, highly critical of the work of a committee, for example. Very often they would read. Very rarely do they speak ad lib. They read prepared remarks. And this became a trend. The chair of the board, who had been the chair for 15 years and on the board for 30 years, immensely respected, decided to do a little bit of research on really what was going on, and reached the conclusion that the board had been infiltrated, and she felt that she had been doing that for 15 years. She felt that she had paid her dues, and that it was best for her to move on. Being who she is, she did it in a quiet way, so she stepped down from the board in February of this year. Following her stepping down, the first vice chair ascended to the position of chair, and I did a little bit more research about these folks that we had witnessed, engaging in these behaviors, and we came to understanding that they are all members of the same organization. The organization is a 501c4, so it's a non-for-profit, but allowed to do lobbying and allowed to not disclose who their financial contributors are. The top 3 employees of the organization are registered lobbyists. And we also came to realize that out of the 40 members that make up CB5, 4 of them were members of the organization. 1 is a paid employee, another 1 is a member of the board, and 2 are dues-paying members. And we find that out not because they disclosed it, they actually never disclosed their affiliations, but just through a little bit more inquiries, we discovered that. When I started to be more aware of this organization, I was explained by an insider that the MO of the organization is to actually infiltrate community boards. They do that not only for Community Board 5, although we were probably the crown jewel and the board that they were targeting more heavily, but they're also engaging in the same tactics with Community Board 2, Community Board 1, Community Board 3. The actual president of the organization is a member of Community Board 3. They have members on CB4, CB7, so that's for Manhattan, but they're also doing the same in Queens, Brooklyn, and the Bronx. They recruit young people. They organize lots of social events, and their big stance is to say that they are a pro-housing organization. They're very careful never to say what kind of housing they are in favor of. And, as this group knows, housing in New York City comes in an immense number of different flavors. And obviously, lots of submarkets, and the uber luxury submarket definitely does not serve the same needs, purpose, or constituencies as public housing or rent controlled or rent stabilized housing. They are very careful never to say what kind of housing. They believe that market rate housing is actually very important, uber luxury, very important, and that the housing crisis will be solved with a shift in the balance of supply and demand. That's all it boils down to. It is solely an issue of supply and demand. If you increase the supply, you fix the problem. They say that there is Econ 101. I feel like saying you should have gone also to Econ 102. Because obviously housing is much more complex than just supply and demand. Even Adam Smith knew that actually, the king of supply and demand knew that it does not apply to land and to housing. So knowing that, seeing the trend, and seeing that they were actually on the verge of getting the majority on CB5, I felt that I really had to, sound the alarm on what was going on. And I knew that doing it from the inside would be impossible. So I made the very, very difficult and very painful decision to resign from Community Board 5 3 weeks ago. Following my resignation, the chair of the board, who was previously the first vice chair, resigned. Actually, he resigned live during the meeting, the full board meeting. And then following his resignation, the chair of the transportation committee, who had been on the board for 10 years, wonderful person, incredibly smart, and a member who is also a representative of a block association in the 50s, also resigned. So you had basically, five resignations of, senior leaders of CB5 resigning. Following this, there was some coverage in the press. Cranes has actually done a really good job of telling the story, sounding the alarm. Following that, I actually have learned even more about the organization. including the fact that not only are they, reaching out to community boards and getting themselves appointed, but they are also reaching out to various levels of government and getting hired. And all of this is public information, so I'm not divulging any particular secrets, but the policy director for the Manhattan Borough President is a former member of the board of Open New York. The former appointee to the City Planning Commission for the Manhattan Borough President is also a former member of the organization. We actually just learned last week that the organization created a super PAC that is tasked, and this is, according to their press release, engaged in a multi-year and multi-million effort in getting pro-housing candidates elected, supporting pro-housing incumbents, and defeating anti-housing incumbents. And the way they define anti-housing, I think Victoria has had a lot of experience with them. Basically, anything that is not market rate is considered anti-housing. So who is funding this group? We actually found out that they are almost solely funded by Dustin Moskowitz, who is a co-founder of Facebook. Depending on the day, this person is worth between $8 and $19 billion, billion with a B. He contributed through his charity called Open Philanthropy. He contributed a total of $3.5 million to the organization in the span of 3 years. The super PAC has been announced in press releases, and they have also announced their endorsed candidates for this cycle. Two assembly members, one new candidate in Manhattan, Micah Lasher, who's running in the Upper West Side for an open seat, as well as 2 incumbents. And the super PAC is not yet, or does not yet appear on the database, the Board of Election database with the state. So we don't know how much funding has been poured into it. I'm actually checking every day. It's still not there. So, we'll see eventually. I guess it will pop up. But according to various statements and press releases, it is an Open New York super PAC. The super PAC is called Abundant New York, and once again advocates for an excess of supply that will, according to their theory, get the prices down. So that's my side of the story. I want to turn into Victoria, maybe, who has had experience and encounters with this particular organization over the years, including in Soho, NoHo, and 5 World Trade Center.
Thank you, Layla. Layla did such an amazing job of really giving all the background, and that's really helpful. So I first encountered Open New York back in, I guess it must have been 2019, 2020, when there was a Soho NoHo rezoning. And I have to say, it wasn't Soho NoHo, it's Soho NoHo Chinatown rezoning. A third of the proposal is actually in Chinatown. Proposal of the plan now is in Chinatown. However, I really, at the time, I wasn't familiar with who they were and what they did. They challenged, of course, I was labeled NIMBY. And what's interesting is that I, as many of you know, I am a founding member of the Coalition for 100% Affordable 5 World Trade Center. So that is literally 2 blocks from my house. So yes, we very much want affordable housing. The interesting thing was that when we were holding hearings on 5 World Trade Center, there were actually members of who came so-called public members who came to speak at the hearings for the LMDC, who were members of Open New York, but they didn't disclose that. And that's part of the real difficulty or the real problem with them, is that they're not transparent, right? They don't say who they're with. We did have a member of the coalition at the time who, when it was his turn to speak, just read off the names and read off their affiliation so that people understood. But what they were saying, the people who came to testify when we were looking to get 100% affordability at 5 World Trade Center, was, well, we're getting a community space out of this, and we're going to get some affordable units. We're really grateful for what we're getting, basically arguing against our position of getting 100% affordability. Eventually, when for those of you who don't know, I ran for state senate 2 years ago, and at one of the forums, one of the founders of Open New York came and asked me specifically about 5 World Trade Center, saying, how could you support, you didn't support affordability in the Soho NoHo rezoning. Again, that's not what I didn't support. I didn't support the plan that was put forth. And he said, yet you want to spend millions of dollars of public funds to create, an affordable building in Lower Manhattan, and really went after me on my position on 5 World Trade Center. But to me, again, I can set aside the argument. So obviously, we are subsidizing 20% with a 421A style program. If that's what we're going to end up with, we are subsidizing developers to give us minuscule amounts of affordability. And let me also reiterate, like 5 World Trade Center, will be 1/3. We are still pushing for more. 1/3 will be affordable units, permanently affordable. So these do not expire. Whereas, the 421A program has an expiration date. So this really made me realize, they're beyond they clearly, affordable housing is clearly not their goal. It's just housing. And as as Layla mentioned, a lot of it's essentially, there is a lot of financial interest in this building behind Open New York, and it's to build. Again, of course, the idea that increasing supply is for housing, as Layla said, is not economically sound. It's not going to bring down the cost of housing. But it's not just that. When we discuss New York, in order to bring down the housing costs on such a plane, you would have to build. We don't have the space to build that. So the real solution, in my personal opinion, is we need rent regulation, something akin to the good cause eviction, where we have a limitation on how much landlords can raise their rents. But that's goes contrary to what they are discussing and what they are seeking. So clearly, it seems to be a bit of a threat. But I think what we need to do is we need to, first of all, let people know who they are and where they're from. If you challenge them on these questions, on their, on their premise that building is going to, or that they stand for affordability, it fails every time. It is amazing to me how they have attacked 5 World Trade Center. When, if you are an affordable housing advocate, I believe that that would be the first place you would say, perfect for affordable housing, because, it is one of the richest neighborhoods and parts of Manhattan is downtown. This is exactly where you would want to build affordability. So, that's been my experience. And of course, when and I've seen them being appointed to community boards, and it's been, and they are really, really good at doing this. They are really good at getting their people in the right places, at getting, their message out to young people who don't really understand, I think, the entire concept of what's happening with displacement when we build luxury, when we're building a majority luxury. So I think we need to just let people know that this is what's going on, and that it's just another way for the real estate industry to take over and dictate what happens in New York. But I see Alex has a question.
Yeah, I wanted to get your reaction to this little bit of history about Open New York. So I don't know if anybody remembers 2023's housing compact, Kathy Hochul's housing compact. Well, it turns out, and there was a lot of evidence for this, her housing compact was essentially written a lot by Open New York. And I was in a Slack group of about 700 members. And when this came out, it was like this drama du jour. And there was screenshots that proved that Open New York had a heavy hand in Kathy Hochul's housing compact, which was not a popular thing. But if anyone remembers, it was very focused. Kathy Hochul's housing compact was very focused on new construction. And anyway, that Slack group no longer exists because I think there were so many skeletons in that closet. One day I tried to log on and it said this Slack doesn't exist anymore.
They have a new one, Alex.
Oh, they do? Are you part of it? Put me in. No, but so yeah, Layla and Victoria, thank you so much. I wanted to get your reaction if you want to react to that.
Yeah, listen, I think that you're spot on. They have been very good at flying under the radar. They have been very good at offering policy. If you listen to a number of our elected officials today, you will see that they're using the exact same lingo. And this lingo is taken verbatim from Open New York materials. They talk about an abundance of housing. That is the rhetoric. And this is rhetoric that you find on the West Coast, in the Bay Area. And it is, SFEMB, which is not the publication, but the organization is funded by the same funder. Okay, he has actually poured more money in SFEMB than he has in Open New York, but they are using the exact same language, the exact same policies, and they are pushing the exact same playbook, and they are going after the governor, the state legislatures, and the city councils in a very systematic and organized fashion. They are here for the long run, and they have the financial ability to do this. One more thing I want to share with this group. Once again, you guys are fairly, highly sophisticated on housing matters. The founder of the organization, not the funder. I mean, he also funds it, but he's not worth billions. But so the founder is a developer from Queens, fairly young. His name is Ben Carlos Thaipen. In an interview last year to Bloomberg, he's also a property owner. He owns with his family a number of rent-regulated buildings, I think mostly in Queens and in Brooklyn. Last year, in an interview, he declares that he wants to get out of this particular submarket and that his goal is to short the rent-regulated multifamily submarket. Okay. Fast forward to February, in an interview, and I'll put the link in the chat. He comes back on this podcast, from Bloomberg News, and he explains that he has realized that shorting this market is, requires a lot of money, and that he has teamed up with hedge funds, and he has advised them to short New York Community Bank Corp, which we know dropped 60% in one day. On that day, the hedge funds that he advises have made millions. And he admits that he is receiving compensation for the advice that he is giving to the hedge funds. Once again, if you are saying that you are in favor of housing, how can you short the very bank that backs the mortgages of 1 million units in the city? This is what the rent-regulated submarket represents. 1 million units. This is where people who are lower class live. This is what they rely on to have affordable housing. This is the only widespread affordable housing in the city. The 421A did not deliver affordable housing, and it is not permanent. Rent regulated is the core of the reason why people who are not uber wealthy can live in New York. And this guy who claims to be a pro-housing advocate is shorting this very submarket. And I'm going to tell you my fear, and this is why, I was asking about CPC. My fear is that when these financial institutions go bust, we've seen what happened with Signature. When they go bust, there will be enough of an appeal for legislators to say, oh, look, it didn't work. We have no choice. We have to do away with rent regulation altogether because the financial market cannot support these buildings. They're worth nothing. And now what are we going to do? And by the way, you should know that the backing of FDNY and Signature is actually done, and everybody said, oh, it's Mnuchin. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. But he doesn't have $1 billion, lying somewhere. Where did the money come from? Related. Okay, so now Related holds the mortgage on the majority of the rent-regulated buildings in New York City, which means that anyone who defaults, they don't even have to buy the property. They own the property. Pennies on the dollar. And I see something incredibly sinister. And once again, it's for the long run, where hedge funds and venture capital has set their eye on New York City the way they have in other submarkets throughout the country to basically become the landlord. And if that were to happen, I think that it will have devastating consequences. It could see the end of the rent stabilization and rent regulation the way we know it in New York City. And once again, that represents 1 million units. This is devastating. So for all these reasons, and I'm sorry if I'm sounding a little bit alarmist, but when I started piecing all of this together, seeing the interview in February, seeing how they are infiltrating the community boards, doing it not only to CB5, but all the CBs, and how they are influencing other levels of administration, state, city level. I really, and I'm not easy to scare. I'm scared. I will admit that I'm scared.
Layla, I think this is so important. This gets to the heart of it. This is sinister, and it's not alarmist. This is the core essence of our capitalist system. That's been morphed into a sick cancer. Is what's happened. And it's an existential situation here. It's for us. It's our home, our existence, our family. It's creating more homelessness and more controls and dominating the markets. And for them, it's what it is it's a manipulative path they're following to crooked. It's really crooked. I mean, what they're doing is they're figuring out ways with their legal expertise and understanding of real estate to take over everything. And this you can see this in the NYCHA properties. You can see it in the tenement buildings. You can see it's been going on for years. I've been living here in Midtown. I've seen the hotel boom. Okay, it's clear. It's just, and this has to be brought out, and this is very important. So sinister, and you hit it right on. And Alex has, and there's a few questions we'll go to. And thank you for putting it this way. This is really, you really got to the heart of it, really did. Alex, Alex, can you pause for one moment? I saw a few new hands.
Sure.
I want to get anybody that, Julian, I think you had your hand up for a split second there, and you put something into the chat too. Julian, you still here?
Yeah, I'm here. I just wanted to say that was an excellent analysis. So I appreciate that. I also just wanted to piggyback. I think that um actually in my experience, I think particularly like everyone is like raising the cap of the FAR, which 5 years ago would have been seen as this insane concept. And now it seems like we're desperate. We have no choice. Every elected, especially in the city in particular, which is astonishing. But to watch like a bait and switch in just a few short years has been pretty telling. Thank you.
Yeah, it really is a scam. I mean, you can see it with the NYCHA properties, because for decades they've underfunded, and they've, as soon as they built them, they were working to destroy them. Anyway, Luana, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you, Layla, for your in-depth analysis of what's going on around here. I'm sorry to hear that you are no longer with CB5. That's where I first met you, and subsequently accompanied you on your assembly run. And I'm just it's just so much going on here. I see CB5, the section of New York is CB5, and the development of so much luxury housing that's going on over there on that side of the street, I would say. It's really disheartening what's going on in the city. But one thing that concerns me, Layla specifically, I know Victoria, you're with downtown, you're district leader for Downtown Independent. Well, your district. But Layla, I'm concerned about, you talked about some of the, influences of people with money and singular issues regarding housing and the development of luxury housing and so on and so forth. But I was concerned about the support of the Democratic Club, the Chelsea Reform Democratic Club specifically, in support of the candidates that are running for Assembly and Congress and City Council, who are in support of the demolition of the New York City housing, Chelsea Fulton area. And I was concerned about I wanted to get your take on why the club supported the same individuals who are receiving those funds that you talked about, and that's listed in their financial history of who's supporting them. And some are also associated with real estate development, particularly with related. So I just want your take on why the club decided to support these candidates. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Luana. It's nice to hear your voice. I miss you.
I'm not camera ready, so.
Well, just your voice does it. So you are correct, and to give a little bit of context for everybody, I'm the district leader for Chelsea. I am associated with the Chelsea Reform Democratic Club, and Chelsea Reform Democratic Club held a endorsement meeting in February. And the club did endorse the incumbents. It's important to note that they are all running unchallenged. So, that I want to, put that out. Now, Chelsea Reform Democratic Club is a Democratic club in the sense that they actually don't decide and choose, and there's not like, an executive branch that makes the decisions. It is basically the membership of the club that votes on the endorsements. And we respect the voice of the people, and we respect their choice. It may not be my choice. I will actually not comment. I will not say how I voted in these endorsement meetings. But certainly, once the majority of the membership votes a certain way, I respect that, and I work towards, getting these candidates elected. So the majority voted overwhelmingly to support all the incumbents, And this is why CRDC is seen as supporting these incumbents. I will say, though, that during the endorsement meeting, a number of the candidates who are incumbents received very pointed questions on these particular topics, including Congressman Nadler, State Senator Holman Siegel, and Assemblymember Simone. They have all come out in support of the NYCHA proposal for demolition. It's no secret that I am staunchly opposed to this proposal for a variety of reasons. I will continue to advocate for no demolition and refurbishment and preserving Section 9 for the tenants of these campuses. But it is true that all the incumbents have stated that they are in favor of demolition. So they did get the endorsement. They did get some pretty tough questions, and I'm hoping that as we continue to progress, they will understand that with our endorsement, does not come necessarily, condoning their position on the campuses, but rather that it should be the other way around. They should really listen to concerns of the tenants and the general position of CRDC.
Layla, I think you agreed with me that there should have been a little bit more debate time to amongst the committee members, and it might have saved some of those endorsements, or might have came with a caveat of some sort. Am I correct?
Listen, I'm the district leader. I don't run the club, and the club has their ways of doing the elections. I think that there may be some points well taken, but once again, I really want to emphasize that it is not the executive committee of CRDC that makes the endorsements. It is a vote of the entire membership. It is, I think, like 500 members who are invited to vote, and the result was not questionable. And for me, it is really important whether we like the result or we don't like the result. The result is the result, and we are a democratic club. We are a reformed club, and meaning that it is the membership that votes. It's not some secret deals behind closed doors that are being made. And I think we really have to respect that.
Yeah, point well taken. Okay, Alex, go ahead.
Oh no, I just realized that my questions for Layla and Victoria can be sent on email, and one of them is about Borough President Mark Levine, so you can infer that it's a sensitive question vis-a-vis what we've been talking about in this segment. And I also wanted to say Mark Kessler and Mark Natanawan are here for our next segment.
Okay, good. Layla, you have a announcement too, emergency meeting for tomorrow.
Correct. Yes. Community Board 5 is holding an emergency meeting tomorrow at 8 p.m. to actually address the very issue that I shared with you today. This emergency meeting, it's my understanding that it was called by 1/3 of the members of Community Board 5 who are gravely alarmed about what has happened and the issues of transparency and openness about members, including, and it's really important to note that the new chair of the board is actually a paid employee of Open New York, which I think is raising a number of issues for current members of CB5. So the meeting is tomorrow at 8 p.m. Right now, the website states that there will be no public comment. This is actually against the bylaws and against the charter. I anticipate that this will be addressed and that there will be an opportunity for public comments, and that I really urge all concerned people to join the meeting, to speak maybe, but certainly to be in attendance. I think that will be really significant.
Okay, so we know they're infiltrating all levels. Okay, they've been working on that with government and everything. Now they're right down to the community board. They've been working on that issue. They're, you hear across the nation, about they're even in schools. We know the cancer creep is infecting everything, our daily life. So on this level, I think is worth a fight, a serious fight. It's supposed to be a community board. I've had issues with any kind of developers and sales agents, real estate on any board. I've wanted to address that, but I had not the capacity. And I think it's going to take a huge capacity, and I think it's going to take a lot of people coalescing. So this could be something to take on if and I'm sure all the housing are at RTC and HCC would probably welcome this fight. Am I Mark? You're on. This could be a nice segue too, Mark. Am I correct? Is that something of interest, Madawan? Did I say your name right? I'm sorry.
Yeah, Natanwan. Hi, John. Good to be here. Yeah, no, that's definitely an issue which obviously has been increasingly sort of at the forefront of politics in New York State and New York City, right? These past couple of years. I think it's something we would have to take back to membership and, like openly like debate and discuss with them. But I'm glad that we're starting this conversation here in this room.
Have you talked about that amongst yourself before? Or?
No, I mean, honestly, we have been dialed in on housing justice for all for a number of years, the Right to Counsel Coalition, typically more focused directly on promoting tenants' rights, right? And providing direct assistance to renters in different ways. But this zoning battle, that's happening across the city right now when it comes to land use, I mean, yeah, it's another dimension of the housing issue overall, the housing crisis, which is very important.
That's a good question. Layla, Victoria, the zoning, this whole zoning, I've went to a meeting that they're addressing. They're talking about affordable housing. Is this somehow connected? They flower it. Of course, their objectives, they say, is to make sure we have more housing. And I questioned them about affordable. Is this another piece of the pie?
Yes, it absolutely is. And in fact, they've been pushing this for a long time, lifting of the FAR, which again to me shows that, FAR was, it's in very certain areas of the city where there's limitations of it. And the first time they pushed for this was with the Soho NoHo rezoning, which they are now, trying to lift the FAR there as well. This is absolutely part of their whole plan, because in the end, what they want is they want to build, they want to develop, and they want to rent luxury buildings. So in order to do that, they do have to lift that. Now, the question, when we move outside of the city, that's it's a different perspective, in my opinion. And that is something that I actually don't feel comfortable discussing, because I don't know enough of what goes on in the suburbs or the smaller towns outside of the city. But certainly in the city, they've long pushed to lift this cap, claiming that, that there's, again, it's a YIMBY stance as opposed to this is how the community has seen itself grow. And I don't know if you're familiar at all with the Chinatown Working Group, but they are an organization that once they saw, that there was this push to develop and bring in luxury, and they have been seeing down in Chinatown in that area that, growth of luxury housing and the displacement that has caused. And they have a plan for zoning, which would limit, again, the heights in certain areas, whereas like in other areas allow the height, certain expansive. But it's a community-led program, because in the end, what we want to see is community stability, and growth, but stability as well. So, but yes, it is very much FAR, lifting the FAR cap is very much part of their program. And there is a bill right now that is being proposed to do that.
Now let's before we move on, I just want to when you say the F, I just want to be clear about something, because what happened in Midtown, of course, in 2008, the hotel boom, hit. They were allowed low extra FAR. Of course, no investor wanted to invest in housing. I've had conversations with them. And nobody's going to. They're out for profit. That's what the system is that we're living under, and that's what's destroying us. If I throw that in there. So they kept the cap, lower cap on the tenement building. So and any kind of housing. So, and of course, they want high-end luxury apartment buildings too. But so they had no hope of creating affordable housing here in Midtown. That's back in 2008. Now, why didn't they? And my thoughts were, if you're going to have a 12 FAR for the commercial, why not do it for the tenement buildings? And it was something I thought we wanted, we would want. It sounds like to me that you're saying you're looking at that's not of interest. That's a negative. Am I wrong, or did I miss? Did I?
So the lifting of the FAR
Yeah.
as a negative. I think it depends on where it is. It really depends on where it is, because, and again, if we do something of that nature, if we lift an FAR, it should come with certain requirements, right? So if you are going to build here, you must provide a minimum of 50% affordable, permanently affordable units, right? So that we continue to have, we can have a mixed, we can have a New York of what New York is supposed to be, and why it's so awesome.
I think, John, it's also important to understand that the cap, so currently in the multiple dwelling law, which is state law, it states that any residential building in the entire state of New York cannot exceed a 12 FAR. FAR stands for floor area ratio. So it's the ratio of the size of your lot multiplied by 12. This is the amount of square footage that you're permitted to build. You're not permitted to build any more than that. But the vast majority of the entire state of New York is actually zoned for much lower FAR. In Staten Island, the FAR is not even 1. It's 0.75. You have to have a front yard, a backyard, side yard. You have to recess and do all sorts of things. You can only build so much on your lot. The only areas of New York City where a 12 FAR is currently permitted are bits and pieces of downtown in CB1 and a fairly large swath of Midtown, river to river, with some limitations here and there. But overall, this is where it is. So when you say I want to lift the 12 FAR cap, that would only apply to stimulating housing in the areas that are already at the cap. Anywhere else can rezone and get a higher FAR without any need to lift the cap. You can go from a 1 FAR to a 10 FAR. And, if you can get your rezoning through the city process, then you're not challenging the state law. So now there is this big battle at the state level to lift the cap. Once again, that would only apply to those very, very few areas that are already at the cap. So I'm going to tell you why I think it's a very bad idea. These areas, downtown CB1, and it's pretty much CB5. There's a little bit in on the east side and a little bit on the west side, but it's mostly in CB5. CB5 is already the highest land valuation in the country. Okay, this is where the land is the most expensive. And the valuation of the land is based on the density that you can build. So if you can build a tiny little house, your land is not worth a lot. If you can build a huge, massive skyscraper, your land is worth much more. So what happens when you lift the cap, you increase the potential density, you basically increase the value of the land. Okay, so your land was worth, let's say, $1 million. Now you lifted the cap, your land is going to be worth $2 million. So what does it do? It means that when you go to the bank and you ask for your mortgage, because you're a developer and you want to build a super tall building, your lender is going to say, okay, this is the value that I want out of this land. So you're going to build more. And it means that I still want my 7% return on my investment. So it means that your units have to be worth more because the land was worth more. So you can, it's like, the dog chasing its own tail. You can never catch up to it. And especially in the programs for developing affordable housing that we have, they are programs that are not permanent, so they expire. So once again, 30 years is all you have to wait. And it's not that much of a wait because you get a tax abatement. So for 30 years, you don't pay taxes. You collect a little bit less rent. And then after 30 years, boom, you can go market rates and you pay taxes. But, at that point, you probably don't care because you're making so much money on the rent. So when we do that, we basically hyperinflate a real estate market that is already on steroids. And what we need to do is actually stabilize and get the speculation out of those super speculative parts of the city so that we can have public housing, so we can have Mitchell Lama, so we can have, those, like a 5 World Trade Center. So we can have those large supplies of permanently affordable housing that basically stabilizes this speculative bubble, because otherwise the market will continue to increase and increase and increase. And, it's the flywheel. It will just never stop. So those are the
eat
reasons
itself
why
up. Yeah.
it's bad to lift the cap.
Yeah, it eats itself up is what it does. So, again, really deep there, Layla. It really is, and it needs another conversation. It really does, and I think this will be good for next month as well as we talk about the landscape. Um, wow, you just bowl me over. You just really knocked me off my feet there. Great. But we do have to move on. And I apologize to Mark and I think Mark and Mark both here. I apologize for running so late. It's just that this conversation is just something you want to, talk about all day. It's something we can talk about all day. But we need to find solutions and figure out what we can do as that straw on that camel's back, and how we might coalesce a lot of people to pay attention to these things. So with that, I know, Luana, you have a question, but I do have to move on.
Oh, I don't have a question. I just had a quick comment to Layla. What she explained is also we must remember that the rezoning of the area, Chelsea and Fulton, is also part of the package. So what Layla explained is what will happen as well. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
No, good point. I'm glad I connected with you on that. Okay, terrific. So with that, Mark and Mark, you want to take it away? Who wants to lead? Mark, you want to lead? Nadawan? Am I saying Nadawan? Yeah, I am saying your name right. Thanks,
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, Victoria. Thanks, Layla. Stick around with us. Go ahead.
I think actually, Mark, would you like to just like share sort of how this story began and sort of like how you got up to the point of launching the 7A case? And then I think we could like sort of work our way to what's happened in like the last year and the present moment. Oh, Mark, would you like to go?
You're on mute, Mark Kessler.
Okay. Am
There
I
you
on?
go. Yes,
Okay.
I can
We
hear
can
you
hear you
now.
now.
Okay. And I also have a video thing going. I don't know if you can see me. I am so
No.
logical here.
Yeah, we
press
can
the
see you.
camera button if you can, because we
Okay.
can't see you right now.
I'm so sorry, guys. You're going to totally not. You're going to curse the day that you invited me to this.
It's
thing.
Zoom land. It's okay. You can take a couple
Okay.
seconds to figure it out.
Okay. So what do but you can hear me, correct?
We can hear you, but
Yes.
you can't see you. So you see the
Okay.
bottom bar where it says video?
Yep. Okay, hold
Uh,
on one second, guys. I so appreciate your I see it. Let me see. I apologize. I will talk if I can't be seen. I'll still talk. I'm doing my best here. Should I just talk? Because I don't mind talking.
Sure.
I'm sorry that you can't see me. Um, Let me just see if I can do this.
So Mark, you want to just kind of introduce you and where you live
Yeah, so I'm in Hell's Kitchen on 46th Street. Um, it's been a nightmare. I regret that I can't be seen right now. You could see my agony if I so basically this has been going on for 3 years. But the story is like, my roommate John, that's had the apartment since 92, they've basically been trying to get him out since then, and it's just basically demolition by neglect. They've just basically done everything they can to destroy these buildings, our slumlords. Ohebshalom, who's now in the news because he just was put in prison for about a month, but we've been living in the prison of this building for years without, I don't feel, adequate help at all. Mark has been great to us, and Alex, and there have been a few heroes along the way, but I feel like very let down by our elected officials. We actually had an elected official try to stop the 7A in the middle of it. So another buyer of the building, a potential slumlord, could just purchase the building and let our landlords, basically off the hook and make money off of our pain. Are there specific questions? Because I'm glad to answer anything that you have to ask. Like I said, this has been like a 3-year battle, and I don't think that there was any real intervention in that time that this 7A started, this case. During the year that it was a trial, the conditions just were exacerbated as far as I'm concerned. We were vilified as tenants to speak up. You talk about the elected officials. I'm going to be nice and not say what I really think, but we have a very corrupt city, and I think that they're trying to address the very conditions they breed. So they show up to these press conferences and, they stand there and smile for the camera. They absolutely hate me. They make no bones about that. And I don't think that's fair that when you are a victim that you actually have to sort of make excuses for like being a human being and having to you're almost vilified for just exposing the criminal behavior. And these crimes are right in front of everybody's faces. These are things that are like, if you walk down 46th Street and you see my buildings, one of them is boarded up and vacated, and that's a rent stabilized building that our landlords systematically got every tenant out with rent stabilized leases because they made the conditions so bad. We hung on,
yeah,
and we moved to this building that they've basically started to destroy, and that's why the 7A happened. But during that time, nobody monitored our conditions or relieved us of anything. We were without heat, without hot water. We had flood. We're on the 5th floor. We have no roof. We have flooding anytime it rains. We have people trespassing, living in all the many warehoused apartments, threatening our lives. They brought in a super last year, HPD did, and I begged them. I said, "Can you please make sure this person's not a criminal?" Now he's basically taken over an apartment, even though the 7A happened. We've not seen any corrections. In other words, the 7A decision was made, but we're still living in the same conditions. And the guy that was this super is now living at the end of our hall, harassing us every day. And he testified against us in court and testified for the landlords. So I don't see any, I'm not here to say, oh, wow, there's like a pot of gold at the end of this rainbow.
Right.
It's been a nightmare. Go ahead.
Mark, that's fascinating. I've heard these stories over and over in other buildings. It's happened in my building. So just to let you know, I'm wary of all that. Are you in touch? I know you had certain agencies in there. Or I imagine you had HPD, DHCR involved with you there on that building.
I think we just had HPD. We had DOB vacate us like several years ago because we had no roof on our building. And that was, again, systematically destroying the building. I would call up HPD every day and do 311 complaints that, as far as I'm concerned, do nothing. And I sound very cynical, but I'm actually not. I'm an artist and I'm in New York because I'm a dreamer. I've had elected officials tell me to move. They've said the solution is to move. We had elected officials meet behind our backs, have private meetings to stop the 7A. To me, elected officials are not there to be real estate agents.
Yeah.
They're there.
You know what? It can be a good tool, I think. Are you, by the way, are you in touch with the 7A management, the receiver?
We are. We are. And I can't say anything bad about him. But we're at a standstill right now because none of the paperwork has been signed. So we have an old super that never really lived there when he was supposed to be taking care of the building. We have him there now at the end of our hall harassing us. They're trying to get him out. But
yeah. So when you say it has to be signed, who signs it and what for?
I don't know any of that. I'm just trying to live my life. And I have to be honest, I'm at the tail end of this, being the advocate. It almost cost me my life. And I'm not kidding. I showed up today basically out of allegiance to Mark and Alex because they're so kind. I have told this story so many times and it never changes. And yet it just it feels like the city gets more and more corrupt and, people get more and more rewarded. I see these elected officials on the street and people treat them like gods and heroes. And they literally went out of their way to try to destroy our building. And
Mark, I think it's a good fight. What you're doing is you're not allowing what you put in, you kind of you're not allowing them to destroy another rent control building, number one. Number two, you're fighting for other people that live there. You're fighting for laws. You're highlighting what's going on, and we need more of this. So what you're doing is a great thing. So I've been told the same thing, move out. But you know what? What about the rest of the tenants? What about our sorry about that.
That's okay.
I have a question for Mark Kessler.
Yeah.
So let's pretend Judge Jennings was on this Zoom call. What would you say directly to Judge Jennings?
That's a very good question. And again, I'm a little bit of a pistol. I apologize again for not being visual, on visually right now. I'd like to engage in that aspect. But hopefully my voice will convey. I actually was on jury duty when she came to our building to actually look at the building. I had to take it. I loved doing jury duty. I was petrified to do it, but I love to see the way our system should work. I took a day off of jury duty to be there. That's how seriously I took it. And I said to her, the super in our building harassed me directly, would follow me home, threatened me. I said, I do not want him in my apartment. She turned to me and goes, well, then I don't need to look at your apartment. Is that what you're telling me? You don't? She had such an attitude with me and was so rude. I would say, first of all, have manners for the tenants that have suffered and literally lived through fires. I'm not even joking, that almost took our lives, several, that this super that's in our building right now witnessed and never did anything about. I would say, first of all, you need immediate action. What good is waiting? If someone's standing in front of a bus and someone doesn't push them out of the way, they're going to be hit by that bus. So there needs to be immediate.
So the super is hired by
management a year ago after the building was basically destroyed. So HPD told me, oh, well, now they're bringing in a super that never did one thing to help our building, never repaired a toilet, a roof, painted anything, cleaned anything. We had garbage piled up. The building was actually not habitable. And
the 7A replaced that super?
They will, but he's still living in our building harassing us.
So
we have no super right now. We have no, we never did. When this guy came on about a year ago, I said to HPD Lois Winters, I had direct contact with her. She has since ghosted me. Everybody has ghosted me. I can't say that I speak any more passionately or crudely than I'm speaking right now, but for some reason I've alienated everybody. Maybe that's part of being a tenant advocate. I don't know if that's normal, but everybody has ghosted me for telling the truth. I said, I begged her, I said, please vet this person and make sure we know what his background is, because I've been told that our landlords hire basically very scary people, when it comes to that point, to come on
Okay,
the property.
I'm a little confused here. Okay, so the guy there now is no longer the super?
Nope, he's not, but he's
Okay, so
still.
he's living there. So
Yep.
have you guys filed any kind of harassment charges or anything
We
like
do
that?
not, but there is an eviction case happening now, but that's again dragging since like before, I want to say since December. So he's been living like, I'm not even in my apartment right now. I'm afraid to be there. And that's their tactic. So basically he's at the end of our hall. We're on the 5th floor and they put him in the apartment right next to ours. He
Okay,
can look at the kitchen.
so he's fired as basically a maintenance management or super.
Correct.
So he's and with his job, he gets an apartment apparently.
Yes, which he never occupied. So he was. I'm going to just be clear on this so you get the information. I won't be long. He was on the 3rd floor in an apartment that was supposed to be his. He went to court and said he lived there. He's never a live-in super at this point. He was barely on the premises. He had this 3rd floor apartment that didn't even have a bathroom. So Judge Jennings saw that. So he perjured himself in court and said he was living in this apartment. It didn't even have a bathroom. In that time, it was October of 2023 that he basically moved onto our floor after the 7A decision was made. So he occupied a new apartment. He just basically took it over. When the whole 7A wrapped. He just moved into an apartment on our floor to harass us. And that's a fact. It's not this isn't
Mark,
yeah.
Mark Manadawan, what are you guys helped, of course, Mark, to get the 7A, and I imagine you're doing some monitoring and legal support for him, correct?
Yeah, I want to I guess step back and talk a little bit about the relationship that I have with Mark, because we've known each other for a year and a half, almost 2 years now, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I feel like the relationship we have, you tell me if this seems accurate. What you do every single day, every single week, whenever we talk, is you always remind me of the urgency of your situation, the real problems you have. You never sugarcoat it. You always just remind me why you're in this fight and what you're going through and what other tenants like you under Daniel Ohebshalom have gone through. And what I always try to do for you, Mark, is congratulate you on what you have achieved through your fighting. Because I think sometimes, it's good to acknowledge that I think you have made real gains through forcing your elected officials to do work on your behalf. And you're right, it's been depressing because they've dragged their feet in so many different ways. They're happy to have a 15-minute conversation with you, right? But at the end of the conversation, they'll just tell you, call 311, and that's their advice. Um, when it came to the 7A, right, they also dragged their feet. HPD didn't want to get involved originally because they thought that your building would just cost too much money to fix. It wasn't worth the project for you. But everybody, I have to say, Mark Kessler is a phenomenal tenant leader because he did not give up over the past 3 years. He talked to the press so many times. He held rallies with other tenants outside. He relentlessly flagged down the elected officials even when they didn't want to talk to him. Out of 19 buildings that are owned by Daniel Ohebshalom, this is the only building that has been taken over by a 7A administrator. And it was because Mark was more tenacious than all the other tenants, and Mark chose to continue fighting until something was done. And well, I mean, once again, we don't want to sugarcoat things. We can talk about the maintenance repairs that have been made so far, the maintenance repairs that will be made over the next year. It's slow going for sure. And we can also talk about the contracting process and why that's taking some time. But Mark, I am legitimately super proud of you because you made this happen. And if you gave up a long time ago, then the building would just be dust. It would be dust and rubble right now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mark,
Go ahead.
Mark Nadawan, have you been in touch with those other buildings? Have we kind of reached out to them, the tenants in the other buildings? Because I think there's a power there if we can reach out to them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are organized tenants in these Daniel Ohebshalom buildings across New York City, which have done their own thing, right? So the reason why he got thrown in jail and arrested was because there were some legal cases at 705 and 709 West 170th Street that brought him to jail. One of those legal cases was HPD initiated. The other case was tenant initiated. I'm working with some tenants at 104 West 83rd Street, and they have their own legal case going. There are tenants at 438 and 440 West 45th Street. Mark's neighbors, he knows those folks over there. And they've had their own legal case going for a couple of years. They've been on rent strike. They were on rent strike for about 19 months. They eventually won thousands of dollars in rent abatements from a judge, which was a great thing for them. Their buildings actually got sold on 45th Street. Their buildings got sold to another landlord last year. So they sort of escaped Daniel Ohebshalom's hands. But the new landlord still has like, their own problems that they're dealing with. So they're still organizing in their own way. And then there's other buildings in Lower Manhattan and Queens, which have their own fights going on. There are a lot of organized tenants out there, but the sad fact is the city just doesn't give tenants many tools to automatically fix, their buildings. And the city has such a terrible, terrible enforcement system when it comes to housing law. Yeah, no, they just don't do enough to crack down on these bad landlords, unfortunately, not nearly enough. There's so many broken buildings in the city.
Okay,
but tenants are fighting.
Here's a question for you guys. If I thought I turned this off, sorry. If the 7A is a decent tool, but it doesn't do enough for us, where is the problem with this? I mean, we're in touch with the receivership, the people that are behind it. Tell me, where is the flaws between both of you? What do you think the flaws are? What do you think they're supposed to be managers? Basically, they're 7A, they took over the management of the building. So where are they falling down? I hear you say something about they're not quick enough on the draw. Where else?
Alex, I know you're probably going to reference the exact same academic paper that I'm going to reference. So would you like to go first? Would you like me to go first?
Go first, Mark.
Sure. So there has been like a series of proposed reforms to the 7A process in New York State, and it ranges from things like what kind of buildings are eligible. So sort of expanding the definition to make it easier for tenants to win in court when it comes to like these 7A cases, to the fact that there are so many different ways in which the landlord can delay the process once it starts in court. And so with Mark Kessler's building, for example, it took like almost 2 years really for you guys to like kind of like win the case. And even when you did win the case, it took more months for them to appoint a 7A administrator to the building. Now that a 7A administrator has been appointed to the building and they've been in charge for a couple months, they're still working on hiring a private contractor to sort of implement the big repairs in the building, which required funding from HPD, and they had to apply for that funding also. So all of that over the course of years, it takes a long time, and they need to speed that entire process up and give the landlord as little chance as possible to delay, which is what they do very, very often. There's probably more I'm missing, and Alex, you can fill in the gaps here. But the final thing is just there needs to be a lot more money that goes into the 7A program, because right now the funding is very limited, and that just limits the number of buildings which can be fixed up underneath it. And that sort of like limits HPD's appetite to even pursue a 7A case, because like I said, like they didn't want to pursue this case at 410 West 56th Street at first because they thought it would cost too much money. If we had more funding to fix up broken buildings and take them over from bad landlords, then we could do more good work out there.
Also,
yes, go ahead, Mark.
I just feel like we need to be very clear on whose side the elected officials are on. There needs to be transparency, because it left a very bitter taste in my mouth to know that they actually tried to stop a 7A. So basically what could happen is like what happened on 45th Street, another slumlord buys the building. Let's not candy coat it. I know, I'm in touch with those tenants. They go without heat and hot water, all of the same stuff, garbage piling up. It's like, and then Robin Ignico out in California was managing this building. She's harassed us. She belongs in prison. She showed up to the trial on Zoom. So why are you allowing her to show up at a trial, you know, and let her like testify for a building she's never even been to personally, but she's helped destroy? I do, you know, I begged Hoylman to intervene in the sale of 45th Street at a press conference. You know, I just think that was so unfair that they got $11 million for basically letting a building, you know, get destroyed. And these are beautiful historic buildings from the late 1800s that have turns of centuries, you know, but it's an elitist attitude. So these are the people that are supposedly working for the people. You know, we're supposed to be working together. These people aren't working for us, they're working with us. But
Mark, that's an old playbook. They trying to you know, I see it all over the city. They want to move people out, and they want to take and make profits. And
but then what I don't,
off your home.
This is my last little bit of innocence left, is why do they act surprised when you hold them accountable for what they've actually done? Like, I've had them actually call me up and like, we're pushing back on you. We didn't try to stop the 7A. Yes, you did. It's a known fact. You tried to stop the 7A after we testified and gathered. This is like hours and days and years of information that we've gathered. I've put my life at risk to take photographs because that's what HPD told me to do. And then everybody bails. So I do feel a little bit like a man without a country. Like, I don't feel like I have anybody's support, nor do I necessarily need it. I'm a grown up and I'm surviving. But when the flavor of a neighborhood has changed because artists like myself can't afford to live there, and you have to make excuses to the very people that should be protecting your rights, there's something really, really wrong there. And I just feel like they're not being held accountable enough.
Well, the real estate industry has a huge hold, and you do have friends in the tenant and activist movement. So it's about coalescing, and I'm glad you're here.
I appreciate that. So to close my I feel like, yes, when a building is even considered for 7A, HPD should really like be on the alert, because we had, since the trial started, we had like the most major flooding you could have. We had no power. We had you know, we had no water, let alone hot water. Like, we had no running water. We had a guy with a baseball bat camping outside my door, banging on my door. I was like shamed every step of the way. So I'm very, very bitter. I've been completely victim shamed when everything that is legitimate and backed up with facts. And I just feel like, what if it's somebody that isn't as strong as me? How do they deal with this? And that's what happens. They get pushed out of the buildings. So I have a sense of defeat even after winning the 7A. Then like, what do other people have that don't have that strength or haven't won the 7A? And there is no checking in. First of all, Eric Botcher's office never even told us that the 7A decision was made. It was like 2 weeks later, and we found out, I think, through Mark. So I find it despicable. That's what I have to say. And if that's not a pretty statement, I apologize for that.
No, I get you. I get it's you've lived with this. I can hear the stress in your voice.
Yeah.
And this is your mental health too that's been affected, and that's a huge point to make too. You know, the mental health, the stress, the aggravation. We should have a home where we come and have a little peace from the outside world. And if we don't get that, it's abusive. It's brutal. We get that. I'd like to delve in.
I had an HPD agent into my apartment, and he said, "We are," and I'm not saying this because I want to believe this, but this is what he said: "We are told to look away." And you cannot play Superman if you're not going to come in and fix the conditions. So how many calls do you make to HPD where it's like you have this issue? Like, they really need to rectify the problems that these 311 complaints are addressing. And if they're not, then there needs to be another way. Because if for 412 West 46th Street to be sitting vacant right now and gutted and it had no roof until I fought to have a roof put on that building.
Yeah.
HPD job. If I did so many 311 complaints and that's the result, then that's a fail. So we need to address those failures.
Yeah. No, that's something to definitely, I'd like to hear more about. We're running a little bit out of time. And I also a little bit more deeper to all the details of what's happened with you. And I think there's maybe we can have an interview later outside this meeting, but I think there's a lot to dig in there, all the details, tell your story. And Alex has a question here.
Yeah, when John Mudd first invited his 7A guests to this 7A discussion back in August of last year, Greg and Amy, and then later on it was Mark and Pete Diaz, we focused on the positives and negatives of 7A. And I just rewatched the replays, and it seemed like the negatives were what we gravitated to because there's so many, not because we want to focus on the negatives, but like the negatives of 7A, or I should say the loopholes, which are all in that academic paper that Mark and I read, outnumber the positives. And so I guess a little ray of hope I wanted to bring forth was, and yes, it does involve another elected official, but on March 21st, I met with two staffers from Councilmember Uriana Sanchez's office. She's the city council's chair on the Committee of Housing and Buildings. And one was a law fellow and one was a legislative director. And they're really enthusiastic about 7A reform because they know that it has so many loopholes. And to answer John's question about which is the biggest loophole, in my understanding, is judges continually giving chances, quote unquote chances, when the landlord says, oh, please give me a chance, because they don't want the 7A to happen.
I'm wondering if we can tie this into some other movements like too. You've got tenant, landlords movements all the time. Maybe there's a way of tying this in, like focusing on your habitability. That's a very important thing, being into your home without the stress, without the abuse, and also having some maintenance issues taken care of. We've been talking about this for here and there, and we've had a conversation about this in one of our meetings a little bit in full. We were coalescing with a lawyer, Sam Chira, I think is, if I say his name right, Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, about basically us as tenants, we can fix things on a cosmetic level without the permission. Okay, some basic things, painting holes, as long as it's not any walls and boiler issues, because that takes permits. But there is a lot of problems can be solved, and also could coalesce a team together if we're taking care of these basic cosmetic issues, lights not working, whatever. I think it can lead into, and with the legal team, I think, and with a lot of volunteers, I think it can lead us into a powerful way of making these places habitable and taking care of the larger problems. I think this is something worth discussing and still moving ahead with, something I do have on my agenda, before the year's out, or I haven't really kind of placed the timeline. We were going to use it. I discussed it with the NYCHA group. I was going to use it with an apartment here in this building. But the tenant didn't want to move forward. Anyway, that's, I think we have to kind of think about how we can achieve certain things on our own, and who we can coalesce. I have 4 messages here. Anybody's?
John, I just want to say as my final thing today that I created a compendium of information for Councilmember Sanchez about 7A reform. They asked for it, so I made one real quick. And if anybody wants to see a copy, please email me. I put my email, alex.young.nyc@gmail.com.
Sounds good. And you, Alex, you were going to get them into a conversation with us as well, right?
Yes, that was part of the March 21st meeting, was to explain like how we had Mark Natanawan on and Pete Diaz and Greg and Amy. And I totally forgot Sam was your actually first 7A guest back in 2020. So I totally forgot about that. Yeah.
Are they planning on coming in the future?
Well, what I said is that we like to have guests in pairs, with the exception of Sam, but that's how we've usually done the 7A guests. So her legislative director, Kadeem, he said that he was thinking of inviting another council member, yes, another elected, but this council member is also interested in 7A reform. So if they can get, his name is Councilmember Shaker Krishnan, and so if he can get him together with Councilmember Purina Sanchez, then they would be our next set of guests.
Okay, sounds good. Let's focus on that. And I think we have to be in communications with the 7A receiver, the manager, the replacement. Tell me, Mark, how often do you speak with them, and how often do you get reports from them, and what's the story there, real quick, and then we have to close out.
I guess I'll go. This is Mark with a C. John, who's my roommate, who's had the apartment. I've delegated some of that responsibility to him. I have spoken to the receiver, though. My main concern is getting this, imposter super out. And so he is taking action with that, legal action. So regularly, I would say we're in touch regularly.
Okay, so those two. Okay, so removing him is your top priority.
Correct, because as 7A states that no agents from prior management are to be in the building. Okay. And nobody else fought that, because I'm the only person that is the mouthpiece. So all the other tenants, after I did all this work, he showed up to the meeting with the new receiver, and nobody said, that's the guy, that's the former super. So he's there. So yeah, that's a priority of mine, because I fear at this point for my physical safety. This guy has been very aggressive with me specifically, because I'm the one that is the activist. So he has.
And the 7A fellow, you have his background. He's done this before.
Mark can answer that.
Yeah, Fernando Alfonso is his name. He is a 7A administrator that has already an established track record of working in other buildings. I actually got some friendly advice from another tenant organizer I know who worked with another building that was fixed up by Fernando. And I mean, every interaction we've had with Fernando so far has been positive. He picks up our calls when we answer, and he kind of gives us straight answers when we have questions for him. He seems like a good man who's on the side of the tenants. But add any details you want there, Mark. That's my personal impression so far.
Is he working on removing this fellow?
Yeah, he filed an eviction case several months ago.
And Mark's, this man never, and this I call him the imposter super, never even occupied that apartment. It was never his apartment. He was only brought on in the middle of a 7A. How HPD even allowed that? He testified in court when he was as a witness, when he was only there for 2 weeks, literally. And then he became this mouthpiece for them in the 7A trial. And talked against the tenants of the building. So and now he wants an apartment there. So I just find the whole thing, I have not a lot of faith in this 7A. I'm grateful for Mark's help, and Alex, they're amazing human beings, and I'm not being ungrateful, but it's gotten worse. Things have gotten worse. Okay. During the trial, it was worse.
Are we going to be down there at when the eviction case comes up with this fellow, or is that part of the plan, or is it?
We're not testifying or anything, but I guess you could go and
celebrate.
Yeah, he needs to go. I mean, he's done he's done abuse. He's still in touch with management outside my door. He's on the phone with Robin Ignico in California. You know, he sabotaged our building.
Yeah, it's probably going to take a little bit to get him out. You know, it's is this his first this case that's coming up? Is that his first time? Because they'll likely postpone it at least once.
It was postponed once already.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So they postponed it once. So barring barring any other issues, maybe they'll hear the case. Is that what they're planning on doing? Is going to trial or?
Yes, because he has a lawyer now.
Okay, so they're going to trial. Okay.
Correct.
All right. So
Yeah. Sorry, John. I do have to hop now. I'm running
Yeah.
late for another meeting.
Yep.
But thank you so much for hosting.
Okay.
And looking forward to
thank you,
being,
thank you. Yeah.
keeping
Appreciate
these
it, Mark.
conversations going.
Yeah. Great, Mark. Good job. Mark, thank you so much for your input and your coming forward with this information.
Thank you, John.
And we'll talk about this further. And with that, Luanis gives us a big heart. Any last words from anybody? Any new people that we haven't heard from? Anybody that want to say the last few words? No one?
Better jump in before Alex Young starts talking. I just wanted to say that there's a press release that was released in November of last year, and the mayor is in it, Mayor Adams, and it's specifically about Mark Kessler's building and the 7A victory and the appointment of Mr. Alfonso, the 7A receiver. HPD's commissioner is also in the press release. I happen to think Mark and Mark should have been in the press release, but I don't know. They probably had to make room for the mayor. And that's in the chat.
So if they're going to take bows over this, they need to step and see this all the way through, and that's what we need to do. We need to make sure they see this all the way through, and keep our voices heard on this, Mark. And we'll certainly let's maybe next we'll find some time or we'll find some time in another meetings and do a little planning. We know the circumstances. We can take the temperature of what's going on, maybe connect with the receivership, see what's not being repaired, see where we can support, and we can always do a side meeting too. So we're all in. The councils are all in for tenant support, homeless support. I mean, this is where it all leads us to, with stress on our income level, being unhoused. It's all part of the wealth extraction policies that this city offers us. It certainly doesn't build from the ground up. So anyway, we have to kind of coalesce together, and thank you all for being here. Our next meeting, of course, first Tuesday of every month. Let's see if I have anything else to add. We have a good meeting next month. We're going to talk about the landscape. Some of this we might even have some time next month on the agenda to talk about this again, or to pick it up and see where we can go. By the way, Charisma White, if she's still here, she's got a new apartment. She's fought hard to get a new apartment. She's told her story many times over. And with that, I'm going to stop this meeting. So please put anything you want to put on the agenda, let me know in advance, and we'll try to work it in, okay? Thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks, John. Have a great afternoon.
You too.